the true sales numbers for the Xbox One have long been shrouded in mystery. Microsoft quickly stopped reporting these numbers as the Xbox One started lagging far behind the PS4 early on during the last gen. Some have speculated, tried to use reports of certain places going, hey, the Xbox One sold so much here during this month, so we can kind of expand that out to try and estimate the sales figures, stuff like that. Regardless, we knew the sales of the system weren't great. That's the whole reason why they weren't reporting it. But how bad were they was always the question. How much was Sony actually beating them by? Now we've gotten some official insight, finally, from Microsoft, thanks to some new court documents. Now, these court documents are in Portuguese, the originals are, so this is a translation that I believe first appeared on the site Game Luster. That's where I'm seeing it originate from. But a line here apparently reads, quote, Sony has surpassed Microsoft in terms of console sales and install base, having sold more than twice as many than Xbox the last generation. So Microsoft is admitting Sony has outsold them by at least 2-1. We know that Sony recently just stopped counting PS4 sales, and their final tally was about 117 million. So that means, according to this, the max amount of systems the Xbox could have sold is about 58.5 million, because that would be half of what Sony was reporting. To reiterate, they say less than half. So again, that's the max it could be. And estimates by people who have looked into this, as I mentioned at the top, have said that they think the Xbox One is coming in around 50 to 51 million systems sold. So it would appear that those estimates are probably pretty accurate. We're likely by now somewhere in that range, certainly between 50 and 58 million, which again is not good. Definitely not as much of a colossal failure as something like the Wii U, but for the company that is supposed to be this juggernaut for a generation that went on as long as the last one did. Don't forget, when we talk about a lot of those older generations, they only lasted like 4 to 5 years in many cases. It was really the 360 PS3 era that kind of started us moving in this direction of longer console cycles. So when you factor all that in, yeah, not great. Now, first off, why would they say this? I've seen people floating this around a bit, like, why, if this is true, why is it coming out now? Again, Microsoft has been keeping this information largely a secret up to this point, so why would they cough it up? For one, that generation is pretty much over. They're not trying to convince you to buy Xbox Ones anymore. They're concerned with the Series S and X systems. And two, most importantly, this court case concerns their acquisition of Activision Blizzard that was announced a while back. As noted, when that announcement first happened, especially coming off of other big acquisitions like them buying Bethesda, people are concerned about Microsoft becoming a monopoly in this industry. So while most of the time these companies are trying to paint themselves in the best, most successful light, they're pretty much never trying to give off the sense that they're struggling, their games aren't good, stuff like that. But this is a very rare instance where they're actually not trying to look too good. Right now, they're actively trying to convince people that they're not becoming too big, too powerful. So this is actually a good time, a very good time to be like, hey, we only sold half the amount of consoles last gen as Sony did. Both the PS4 and Nintendo Switch are well over 100 million. We're over here barely able to break half that. So we need these acquisitions to be more competitive. Pretty smart, actually, when you think about it that way. So I wanted to talk a bit today about why they did so poorly against the PS4 and how they're looking right now going into this new generation. Because if you follow my channel, in recent years, I've had a lot of good things to say about Xbox. They certainly still aren't killing it exactly in the exclusives department. In that vein, they do need these big acquisitions. We just need to pray these studios don't end up like Rare. But I've liked what they've done in terms of backwards compatibility. They're definitely the leaders in that arena, bringing games to PC day and date. That's a big deal, especially obviously for PC players. In fact, I'd say you can thank Xbox for having the big PlayStation games coming over to PC now. You know, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, Jesus, just came to PC. Even though Sony isn't as quick with the releases as Xbox is, even though they're a separate company, obviously it's not like Phil Spencer told Sony to do that, but I think Sony took that leap after seeing it work out so well for Microsoft. So if Microsoft didn't do it, who knows how many games PC players are getting today that they'd be still missing out on. And some argue that this is the reason that the Xbox One didn't sell as well. You know, oh, Microsoft put all their games on PC, so there was no reason to buy an Xbox One. While sure, that cost them some sales, sure, a lot of people who were already playing on PC weren't going to buy an Xbox One if they didn't need to for any of the games, but when it comes to console sales, it's very much a different animal. Like, there are a majority of people who don't play on PC at all, who only play on console, and when you're in that camp, having the games on PC doesn't really matter. If you're not playing any big AAA games on PC, you're not going to play Halo or Spider-Man on PC either. And the percentage of PC players is always kind of a hard thing to judge because, again, you'd have to be talking about people who are playing these big AAA games. PC kind of has a similar issue when we talk about judging the amount of PC players as mobile does, in my opinion, where it's like, with the mobile estimates, we'll get numbers like 95% of gamers play on mobile because they're basically saying, oh, did you play 30 seconds of Flappy Bird when it came out? Oh, well, then you're a mobile gamer. PC, similarly, just because you're playing games on PC doesn't mean you're necessarily playing the big AAA releases, doesn't necessarily mean you have a gaming PC. So even if all the games run all the platforms, there would still be people who want the dedicated gaming console, the ease of it all. But more importantly, I think you got to remember that it's not like they started off the Xbox One generation with games being day-and-day releases with PC. They started off still having exclusive games, and the whole PC thing didn't start until well into the Xbox One's life cycle. And surely that was partly due to the Xbox One already selling so bad. So no, I don't credit the games being released on PC with killing the Xbox One. You poor PC players. It's like, first they say you shouldn't get any of the games because you're going to just pirate them all on PC, and then we give you the games and it's like, oh, you PC players, you're killing the consoles. It's like, gee, you can't blame the master racers for literally all of your problems, console fanboys, okay? In my opinion, the Xbox One wasn't successful because it had easily one of the worst rollouts in gaming history. I mean, who could forget the hype over being able to watch cable TV through your Xbox?
Xbox, watch TV. And with that simple command, I'm watching live TV.
Excuse me, couldn't I just switch inputs like I've been doing for the last 2 decades on my TV? Yeah, but if you just use your TV remote, you wouldn't be able to yell at the TV like a psychopath. Kinect coming bundled, forcing people to buy that piece of shit with every system at the outset. Yeah, you gotta make sure everybody has it. Everybody's gonna wanna play Kinect Sports, Kinectimals. You're gonna wanna be able to give Skittles those belly rubs.
Good job, Skittles. Okay, Skittles, that's enough, please. I get tickles.
Yeah, what a great concept. Teaching kids to play with dangerous, ferocious animals. Yeah, that never goes wrong.
It goes on. Ow, son of a bitch!
Okay, Skittles, that's enough, please.
Which the Kinect fed into what I believe was the big issue with this system at launch, and certainly until they would eventually stop bundling the Kinect with the Xbox One, but that would come, again, much later. Let's be real, nobody cared about Kinect. It added little to no value for most people, I would say. Chasing the already dying, I'd say just about dead at that point, motion-controlled gimmick, which I thank God every day that motion controls are mostly dead because they suck. But bundling the Kinect in there costs money, a lot of money. And so the Xbox One was $100 more than the PS4 at launch. The PS4 launched at $400, the Xbox One at $500. And so what benefits do you get for your extra $100 in terms of just playing games like a normal human? Not trying to use the console to watch cable TV, not trying to use the Kinect like, 99.99% of people actually wanted to do with these systems. Yeah, what are the benefits for you, the 99%? Well, many games ran at a measly 1080p on the base PS4. And for your extra $100 on Xbox One, you could play many of those games at a whopping 900p. Yeah, anyone who followed gaming news in the early days of the last gen, covered it in my case, surely remembers the countless news stories about games running in lower resolution, performing worse on Xbox One. It seemed like every couple of days I'd see a story pop up. This game is 1080p on PS4 and 900p on Xbox One. Now, that's not a huge difference, but to basically tell people it's all about this Kinect, again, watching cable TV on the system. But if you're one of these people that is just looking to, you just want to play video games on your video games console with a controller, you caveman, you don't want to use your body as the controller. Well, if you're in that camp, you're essentially paying more money for worse performance. And that is why I believe the Xbox One stood no chance. I don't think that will ever be a solid marketing angle. I mean, you want to go the Nintendo route, do something different. Still, whatever you're doing different better be good. You better not just be chasing a dying trend. But still, if you want your system to be weaker, perform worse than the competitors, then you sure as hell better not be trying to charge more money for it. I don't think the Switch would be nearly as successful if it was $500 at release. Even though it's a much better idea than the Xbox One with Kinect, obviously, you can't come out here with gimmicks that the vast majority of people aren't going to care about. Oh, don't you want to be on a video Skype call with your friends on your Xbox so you can talk about your gamer score?
Wasn't there a video game about that?
Yeah, there was. My coworkers played it just to boost their gamer score.
Maybe you should do the same thing.
What? My gamer score is 100% legit.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, the level of cringe in these presentations certainly didn't help either, but yeah, this was not in any way a formula for success. And when you combine all this with the fact that there just weren't many great games on the Xbox One, I still attest that the Rare Replay Collection is by far the best Xbox One exclusive. They dropped the ball with so many of the big IPs. Halo 5 considered by many, myself certainly, to be the worst Halo game, all the while Sony's cranking out stuff like Spider-Man, Last of Us, Bloodborne. But specifically in those very early days, these choices just allowed Sony and the PlayStation 4 to run away with it, because at launch, the first year or so, neither one of these companies had the best exclusives, I'd say. Killzone Shadowfall didn't exactly light the world on fire on the PS4 side, but when you just stack these consoles up next to each other, one was an overpriced multimedia player and one was the console that played video games, and shocker, that's what people want out of a gaming console. And Microsoft did eventually wise up, start selling the Xbox One without the Kinect, but it was all too little too late. The damage had been done. People had already, chosen their side with the PlayStation 4. People who were going out to still buy a console, their friends were all on the PlayStation 4. They even put out the last iteration, the, Xbox One X. That was more powerful than the PlayStation 4 Pro. They got the idea. They eventually got going in the right direction, but this thing at that point was unsalvageable. Now, for the Xbox fanboys that are going to be angered by all this truth, things are definitely looking better, much better for the Xbox this generation. After the fall of Don Matrick and the rise of Phil Spencer, we're actually just now seeing what Xbox looks like with Phil at the helm from the start of a generation. And it's looking good. I think the Xbox Series X is a great console overall. Game Pass is an actual trend setter. This is something where the competition is actually chasing them and are far behind. Even admittedly, in a recent Sony investors call, I think it was, they were talking about their service versus Game Pass, and I think somebody said they needed years, I believe they said, before their service could be something that could actually compete with Game Pass, and even then, it may not be possible for how much money it would cost. So yeah, Xbox is beating their asses in this department, and it certainly seems like the service route is where the next mad scramble is. This is what everyone's trying to build right now. And of course, they're still doing great with the PC support and stuff like that, which I like. As I said at the onset, though, they still have the big issues in terms of like banger exclusives. Halo Infinite is turning out to be a dud. The Bethesda and Activision purchases are insanely massive, though, way crazier than any acquisitions that have ever been done before. So hopefully they'll manage those studios better than they have their own. I've also said, though, given their track record, I can't say I have the most faith. But again, we are talking about two of the biggest players in the industry, Activision and Bethesda, so it's certainly going to make a difference and ensure more, hopefully, quality content continues to make its way to the new Xbox consoles and, of course, Game Pass, making it an even better value. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Probably went on a bit too long for discussing a one-sentence quote from a court document, so if you stuck around through my rambling until the end, thank you. Let me know your thoughts on Microsoft admitting they sold less than half of the Xbox Ones as Sony sold PS4s in the comments. Did this surprise you? What influenced your decision to buy either one of these systems last gen or perhaps neither? And how do you think things are looking for this new generation in terms of the Xbox Series S and X versus the PS5, and how Nintendo and the Switch is going to fit into all that? As always, I'm the Shy Guy, Johnny Zakari, and thanks for watching.